Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of 0 to 60. Now, something weird is happening. It's raining still. This doesn't happen that often in Queensland, and to have it for 4 days is a bit weird. Anyway, this episode is gonna be installing or sewing, or however you want to do it, that new leather steering wheel cover. I actually had a bit of a sort out this morning, trying to work through all the parts that I've got. They've been building up, put it that way. But this is all the stuff that I've currently got here to install onto that M54. Now, as I said in that last video, we're still going to work through and try and work out what's going on with the engine, but as time allows, I'll keep doing this stuff as well, even while we're working on the engines. I've actually got, just to give you guys a quick rundown, we've got some Puddle Lights. These are, I think that one's BMW logo, one's M logo, and I've also got some bright LED ones, which I'm probably going to stick with because I actually like the puddle light feature and being able to see the floor. This is 2 sets of guard flashes. We've got smoked and clear. I'm going to fit them, and I'm going to get you guys to choose which is going to look best on the black car. Pink brake pads. Now, these were actually a gift from Dickass, or really it was an apology for sending the wrong brake brackets. So I haven't paid for them, and they're supposed to be their upgraded pads. So we'll have a play with them and see if they're better than the ones I supplied with down the track. This here is the third version of the rear brake bracket. Looking forward to see if this actually gets those rear calipers bolted on without any issues. We have the updated brake lines for the rear calipers. You may have noticed, but the ones they supplied were about twice as long as they should be, so they're just looped around a control arm at the moment. Lovely install. Here we have some 12mm spacers. Now, these were hella cheap. They actually seem quite good. They say they're forged aluminium. Be interesting to see. But yeah, it was like under 100 Aussie for a set of 4, which is bargain basement cheap, and they have come with extended bolts. The bolts are my concern with cheap spacers. If these are not proper 10.9 grade bolts, they will bend or snap, and that's when you have a problem with a bolt-on spacer, or bolt-through spacer. We'll see how we go. I'm not sure if I'm going to leave them on the car forever, but it will be really just to see if it affects the stance in a good way or not. Something to play with. Here, and that's what we're doing today, we have the leather steering wheel cover. Now, this was a Chinese item. I went with genuine leather, but we'll get into that in a minute. Here I have all the fittings for a custom fuel line. These are all ex-China, but it still ended up nearly $200 in fittings. But that's something I'm looking forward to doing, and replacing my current fuel line setup with all AN fittings and braided line, just a little bit of security. Here I have an upgrade on my current low pressure fuel pump setup. I've gone for the BMP twin Walbro in-tank holder, and also I'm going to replace my Chinese Walbro with another genuine Walbro pump, which is that one there. And these two kits are, well, to really start working on the engine. We've got a leak down tester. The reason I'm not doing that today is I don't actually have an air compressor. I will have an air compressor tomorrow though. So the leak down test will happen tomorrow. And there's just some timing tools, which I ordered last week, preempting having to take an M54 apart. So let's get on with getting the steering wheel off. Okay, so I'm going to use the steering wheel off the lovely parts car. Just in case I cock it up, I won't damage my actual steering wheel. I need to get in the car. So the car is still balancing on those 4 wheels. What could go wrong? And it is raining. Okay, so better make sure you guys can see what's going on here. Okay, so to get this airbag off, good, steering wheel's locked. There are 2 little slots in the back of the steering wheel, and they actually remove some spring clips which clip the airbags in. So that took about, well, I know it took 4.5 minutes. I couldn't do it with the GoPro in the way. And I'll try and show you what you're actually supposed to undo in a momento. Okay, so once you've got the bag out, those 2 clips out, 1 airbag off, and I'll show you guys what I was trying to do for all that time. So those 2, that little wire there and that little wire there, they're what hold the airbags in. Just to confirm, you'd like to... Okay guys, if there was a weird cut just then, it's because my phone and its Siri assistant keeps cutting in. But once I got the airbag out, unclipped the 2 terminals on the back of the airbag, and I just wanted to show you guys what I was trying to do and struggling with the lever. So you got these 2 holes, hopefully you can see there. on the back of a steering wheel. When you poke a screwdriver through, it hits this metal, it looks like a thin metal wire, but it's got a bit of spring to it. It's a spring really, and then you just need to push that down like that, and that's what releases the airbag. But when you haven't done it for a while, getting the screwdriver on the right angle is always a bit of fun, and it's easy to miss and go down into here. But anyway, we got it off. It's a 16mm nut. Let's have a go at cracking it off and getting the steering wheel off. Okay, so the steering lock is locked, so the wheel shouldn't turn, and we'll see how hard it is to undo. Not very hard at all, far out. That was nearly finger tight. You might have guessed I was braced, ready for a big heave, but that wasn't too bad. Now, there's a good chance the airbag may have been done in the recall last year or the last couple of years. Let's see how hard it's all really easy. Everything is super gentle. There it is. I was probably a bit rough with that. So this is the wheel I'm going to use, and the only reason I'm using this one instead of my one is mainly so I don't have to take mine off if this is a fail. If this wrap works, I will fit my paddles, all my buttons and all that sort of stuff to this wheel and my trim piece. But yeah, let's get it inside, we'll strip it down a bit more, and we'll work out how we're going to put this leather wrap on. Well, I have the wheel all stripped down, all the paddles and trims and wiring is out of it, and I've also given it a clean with some isopropyl, just to remove any sweat, grime, leather treatments, anything that might stop the double-sided tape that we're about to use from sticking to this wheel. And I'll just show you the kit. So this is one of the AliExpress kits from Me-Want. I'm sure that's how you pronounce it. And it is a proper genuine leather kit. Now this was around, I think, 70 or 80 Australian dollars delivered. Now Mark, who was actually in the E90 engine removal video, he ordered one from Me-Want about 2 weeks before I did, and he went for the fake leather cover, and he actually fitted it last weekend, which is what spurred me on to do this install. And his looks 95% perfect. There's just one section that wasn't quite right, and that's because of what he's gone through. That's why I've removed the wheel, because you sort of think initially it'd be easier to do it on the car so the wheel can't move, but it was just doing some of the sections around the back weren't quite perfect. So we're hoping to try and nail this one, although I've never sewn anything in my life. So I've just had a quick read through the instructions. The first step is to make sure this is the right cover. So I'll get that stretched onto the wheel, and I'll give you guys an update. I'm not going to film everything because Mark's, it actually took him about 6 to 7 hours. So I'll just give you updates as we go through the process and find any realizations really. Okay, so instantly, just trying to get that on the wheel was actually a bit of a struggle. Doing these first early steps would probably be much easier if it was bolted to something, but I've stretched it on. It's quite tight, but it does stretch more than I thought it would. And yeah, I'd say it's definitely the right cover. If we fold it over, you can see it sort of, sorry about the light, it comes to, just about comes to the perfect size in the middle. Now something that I didn't do then, I didn't pay enough attention to the rotation of the wheel. It does actually have, hopefully I can see you guys, it's got stickers for front and rear, so you know which way it goes on. So it's all pretty straightforward, but the one thing I have done is I've clocked it incorrectly. So yeah, from this point on, it actually says to remove it here and then apply the double-sided tape to the edge. So I'm going to get on with that, and I'll give you guys an update once the double-sided tape's on. Okay, so we have double-sided tape all the way around. Now it says in the instructions to leave a 5mm gap, and that's so that you can basically, as you sew it together, it can stretch in that portion. We'll see if I've done that correctly or not shortly, but before we take the backing off this double-sided tape, we'll get it on the wheel, make sure it's positioned 100% perfectly before we start pulling the backing off the tape. All right, I think this next bit's going to be the hardest part of the job. Okay, so I actually time-lapsed putting that on, and even though I was trying particularly careful to keep it lined up, as you stretch the leather on, obviously it wrinkles its way around, so I'll struggle and try and get this all perfectly aligned. Mark, the guy I know who did the one last week, he said it's very, very important to make sure that it's perfectly aligned rotationally, and also the twist on the that axis there as well. All right, I'll keep struggling with this. Okay, so I've gone through and positioned that as well as I can. I've spent about 5 minutes trying to make sure that it's well, really just centered correctly that way on the wheel and centered rotationally as well. Now we've still got all the backing on the double-sided tape, and what I'm going to do first, the instruction book says to remove all the backing, but what I'm going to do first is focus on the areas where we're likely to get wrinkles and try and reduce the chance of getting any clumping up of the leather there. So inside here I've got a fair bit of double-sided tape. I'm going to remove that bit first and work on this part here, feeding it down around and making it so it's nice and tight, and that bottom piece, it actually loops round and then joins here, so that will get sewn together. And also the same, I'll do the same with these groovy bits in here as well, because it does actually sink down. So we've got to make sure that this inside these areas here are nice and tight. So I'll get on with that and I'll let you know how it goes. Okay, so a bit of an update because I got carried away / horrified with my work. Yeah, just so you guys know, I've never used a needle before. I had no idea that actually quite sharp, so just keep that in mind. Yeah, I've got a couple of extra holes in my fingers. Now I've done the bottom section. Now from this angle, she looks all right. As I said at the start, I was really concerned about getting wrinkles or creases in these sections, and I think so far, as we've started to pull it tight, we've actually succeeded there. Now where it doesn't look brilliant is the stitching, so I'll try and get the light in the right position. So you can see down there in that bottom section in the corner, that's where actually, well, I'll show you. I started on this seam here, and I didn't know how hard or how much tension you could put on these threads, so I was quite gentle as we went around this corner, and even up to probably around this seam here, I just simply was not pulling it tight enough. So you can see there's probably a 1mm gap between the two pieces of leather. Now the other thing I've cocked up on, even though I knew and I tried really hard to position it, I've positioned the front pretty much bang on. So when everything's on the car, it should actually look okay. What I didn't check was the back. So the back is actually slightly twisted. You can see here, this side is lower down on that piece than this side. Because it's real leather, it's actually quite pliable. I'd almost liken it to, if you've ever tried vinyl wrapping, that's another thing I'm not very good at. So you get a fair bit of movement trying to do it. So anyway, after this one sort of being pretty loose down the bottom, which you can see there, and then I started tightening it up as we come up to the top. The top was actually quite good. So I thought I'll try and be clever on the next one. Oh, and the other thing I did, because I didn't line up the back, you can see the seam doesn't line up there, which is a bit shit. I mean, you could never charge someone for this level of work, but hopefully when it's on the car it won't be too noticeable. So what I tried on this one, I actually started on the seam right there and then worked my way up, and it was actually going okay. However, you can see there, it's still not lined up. So I started on, pulled those two lines in line. God, we do not have enough light in here. And then worked my way up. But I had the same problem up here. I couldn't, no matter how tight I pulled that, I couldn't actually get those two to come together. So unfortunately, there's still a bit of a gap there. And working its way around to the back. So look, not stoked, but I'm going to keep cracking on. Yeah, if you're watching this and doing it yourself, make sure you line the back and the front up perfectly, and you can stretch the leather much more than I realized. Anyway, I'll keep going. Well, it's finished. Well, the wrapping anyway. And it actually looks much better than I was expecting. So I didn't do it perfectly, and most of the issues were caused by not lining up the back. And I sort of, where's the thing? So I've got one crease just in there. That's the only crease you can really see from the front. So when it's actually fitted in the car, it's going to actually look quite good. Keep in mind this light is showing up any creasing or any imperfections at all. One thing that I do find quite fascinating, so that is where the join is on the factory steering wheel, and you can actually see the leather is pulling tight into the factory groove on both sides. It'd be nice if they put that seam in the same spot, but not the end of the world. But yeah, all the parts I was actually concerned about, and getting any wrinkles or warping in these sort of tight areas have actually gone really well. One thing I did focus on when I was doing this is all the areas, well, ones you can see, and then the contact points, so where my hands will normally be. I wanted to make sure that the stitching was perfect and everything felt right to the fingertips. However, it wasn't faultless. Now, I'll try and flash up some pictures as we do this on all the stitching, but you can see this is how my stitching has ended up. I guess it's not terrible, but this one sort of overlapped a bit and there's a bit of a gap. This is the worst part. So that is the join I started on. That's where I first started, and I just wasn't doing it anywhere near tight enough. So I actually ended up pulling the thread tight, the first one that I went in, and closed this gap up, and then I've added some more thread across this section here just to try and clamp it in a bit tighter. It looked fine from the front, but it just wasn't seated right, and as I've tightened it, it has caused that little crease there, but it's on the very bottom of the wheel, so it's not somewhere that your fingers should get in contact with very much. This side pretty much went perfect. Yeah, I think if I was going to things to recommend, make sure the front and the back is perfectly lined up before you start threading. And yeah, just I did not flip it over once and check what the rear alignment was, and you can see there that join there is further down than this join here. I mean, it's worked and it's stretched and it's pulled together, but just keep in mind, align the front and the back. Pay super care on these sections so that you don't get the ripples or any creases in there. Pull that tight, and I would start, if I was going to do another one, I would start on that join there and work my way around, and then that one there, and then same here and all the way across, and do it all in one go. But when you do it, something I've learned from doing this, the thread is actually quite strong. You can put a fairly large amount of tension on the thread and pull it together. Where's the worst section? The first bit that I did, hopefully you can see in there, you can see where the leather's not quite joined up. There's a couple of mil gap, and it's just because I thought I was putting the maximum amount of tension on. So yeah, just keep that in mind. You can pull it quite tightly. I'll put this little trim piece back on. This is the one from the parts car. I'm going to put the different trim, I don't even know what it is off, but I've got the silver trim on my wheel, which I prefer, and it's in perfect condition. And I've also got the LCI paddles as well. So that'll go on this wheel. And this will eventually go in the E92, but for now, might just look at it for a little bit longer. Sado. Alright guys, so yeah, I will put a link to this on AliExpress in the description below if you want to grab one. It was around the $70 or $80, and it is the genuine leather. Mark, the guy that did his E90 last week, he used the fake leather, and for the money, get the leather, without a shadow of a doubt. It's like half price the other one, but this feels like a genuine BMW steering wheel. It feels like an F-Series leather steering wheel. That's what it feels like, which is... I've got to tidy up some threads there. But yeah, it feels really, really good. Very, very happy with it. The only other thing I did do, which it doesn't say in the manual, I added a few little dots of super glue just onto the corners, just to make sure they weren't going to lift up and that the threads wouldn't pull through. But yeah, aside from that, I just followed the basic instructions. Alright guys, thank you very much for watching. Leather steering wheel wrap completed. It's not perfect, but it's the first one I've done. And I think if you're a bit more... If you've used a needle before, you'll probably do a better job. But yeah, keep in mind you can put a fair bit of tension on those threads to get it to clamp on. I'm pretty happy with it. Alright guys, thank you very much for watching. Tomorrow we should be picking up a compressor to do the leak down tests. We're also supposed to be filming a 1,000 horsepower Supra. So we'll see how tomorrow goes. It's probably not going to be much good in the rain. But yeah, we'll see. We'll definitely be getting that compressor anyway. Alright guys, thank you very much for watching. Catch you on the next one. Peace.